one of the biggest variables in prediction of how jacked you will ever be, there are really two of them. One I'll cover later, and you do have influence over that one. But the second variable is, what did you start with? There are people in high school that just exist. They just grew up and played normal sports, and they're 5'11", and they weigh 175 pounds, and they have a six-pack. And you're like, holy shit, this is just the muscle you normally carry. These are the guys that when they go to college, they start training a lot. They get up to 220 completely drug-free. They get up to 290 not drug-free, and then they win the USAs on their first try. Hey folks, Dr. Mike here for RP Strength. I am a professor of sports science, and I'm a competitive bodybuilder and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu grappler, and this YouTube channel, if you're new here, is all about getting you jacked and lean and strong and healthy and happy and potentially laid. If you're not new to the channel, I sure hope you're getting laid by now. Good luck. Let me know in the comments if anyone's gotten laid. In any case, today's video is a bit more philosophical than usual, I guess. It is to discuss genetics as they apply to your muscle growth and fat loss potential. So let's get right into it. People talk about genetics all the time. Oh, I have good genetics. I have bad genetics. My biceps suck. I can't lose fat on my ass, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I wanted to lay out kind of like a bit of a logical architecture so that we can all think about genetics maybe a little bit more astutely and make more sense out of the whole thing and fall for fewer kind of fallacies. So one thing that I see not getting discussed a ton with genetics is that people tend to bifurcate into these kind of distinct categories of good genetics versus bad genetics. And some people think there's really two categories. Now, that's a real crappy approximation to the shape of what most genetic expressions do look like, which is a normal distribution, okay? It looks like one of them doohickeys, like a little molehill type of situation. And the normal distribution implies something. It implies a few things. It's actually one of the deepest shapes in nature, believe it or not. It is kind of the closest you get to viewing the structure of the deep universe and how it's arranged. What the hell does that mean? Well, normally distributed functions, which very many genetic variables in trying to get jacked and lean are, mean a couple of things. One is it's also called the bell curve. The big thick part of the bell curve is that 50% area. So we can first very, very easily conclude that the vast majority of people, and statisticians typically say something like 2/3 of all people, are just really close to the average for any given trait. So that means if you're thinking about, hey, like what are my genetics for getting jacked, or do I have good genetics for fat loss or bad genetics? The very likely answer, more likely than not, is that your genetics are pretty close to average. Maybe a little worse, maybe a little better, give and take. But outliers, folks with really good or really bad genetics, are by definition statistically rare. So something like 1 out of every 10 people you ever meet will either have exceptionally positive genetics in some regard with getting jacked and lean, or exceptionally negative genetics. What we call extreme genetics, amazing genetics, or terrible genetics are even more rare, something like 1 out of 100, but they sure as shit do happen. 1 out of 100 is an interesting number because if you went to an average-sized high school, that means maybe 5 to 10, 5 to 15 people in your high school, or put probably in a way you could relate to a bit better, if you have a 4-year high school, 1 to 3 people in each graduating class is very likely to have extremely good genetics for getting jacked and lean, and 1 to 3 people is likely to have extremely bad genetics. Now, the upside of this, in a good way, is that most pro bodybuilders that you often look up to have very good, often unusually good genetics. Not always extremely rare, but much more often you see in the general population. But very, very often, they have just straight up good genetics, at least, if not great genetics. On the downside is that if you're a personal trainer, if you're trying to help your friends and family with fitness, some of your personal training clients, for example, will respond very poorly to any stimulus. Their bodies just won't change much. It'll take heaven and earth for them to change a little bit. And there's an issue with that. So now that you're aware that genetics can be so different among people, it's rare for them to be extreme, but nonetheless still happens, you can understand the phenomenon of when maybe your personal training clients or maybe yourself or someone you know really tried really hard at the whole lifting thing and the dieting thing, and they're saying like, dude, it's not happening. And the trainer's vexed and they're like, what am I doing wrong? And it could be that you're not really doing anything wrong. This is just kind of the state of the world as it is. If you try to get a 10-year-old ready for like tryouts for an NBA team, you could have 2 months of really good train up and then it would just get dunked on, get kneed in the face by accident, and that's the tryout. And it would be a real giant waste of your time for you to be like, what did we do wrong? How come he's not playing for the Phoenix Suns? Because he's 10. And genetically, at that point, as far as expression of his genes, he's just not an adult and, not good at basketball yet. So some people, that yet lasts, well, gee, you've got most of their lives or their whole lives. And so you have to understand it. Some people are just going to be exceptional. And some people are just going to be real meh. But most people are somewhere in the middle. That means you're probably somewhere at least close to the middle. Next point, another philosophical point that may interest you, is that genes, your DNA, affects almost everything in physique outcomes. We already know a bunch of the physical stuff, and we're going to cover that in a bit, the real important stuff that I think genes can affect and how really that can change how your training outcome occurs. But genes affect things that are somewhere between unusual for people to suspect genes affect them, especially in most colloquial conversation, or downright politically incorrect. So I'll try to steer most of the politically incorrect out of this conversation, try not to get canceled, but we got to talk about a little bit something. So for example, roughly 50% on average, huge caveat there, because it varies considerably, of the proclivity to be a hard worker is explained by your DNA. So people will often say, yeah, he's got good genetics, but he doesn't work hard. That actually means he doesn't have good genetics, because good genetics means that you have the genetics for the body physically and the genetics in your brain to make the body, because all bodies require tons of work to get to their extreme, most elite perfection look. And so if you don't have the proclivity to work hard, or put it another way, if you're in the bottom 10% of that normal distribution, you're all the way back here in the little tiny corner of proclivity to work hard, you probably won't amount to shit in physique, and it'll probably be, quote unquote, your fault, in the sense that you just never did the work or never did nearly enough of the work. So that's definitely a thing. Now, it also goes the other way, where some people are born to work hard, and if you don't give them hard work, they go insane. And we call those people Asian. I had to say it. It's funny. But on a serious note, people of all races, genders, etc., sometimes fall into that category. And while they are awesome to work with because they will absolutely accomplish everything they could, sometimes they also tend to stress out a lot and have trouble unwinding. So that's another thing. Another thing is genetics absolutely play a huge role in your ability to take instruction and even your interest in taking instruction. You don't take instruction, well, you're probably not going to amount to shit in sport, probably in physique, and etc. And it takes some really good genetic proclivity to even begin to understand the nuances in training theory and application, which means if you have bad genetics for taking instruction, you're not working well with a coach or at all. If you have bad understanding of nuance, you're just going to train like an idiot all the time. Many, very, very, very many jacked people fall into that category. Maybe bottom fifth of taking training insights from other people, bottom fifth for understanding nuance and complex training theory, and then they end up like lifting a lot, taking lots of steroids, getting really big, and then getting really hurt, and then retiring when they have a third kid and they need a real job. So that's a thing that happens, and that is also highly genetic, just to put that on the map. Now, let's talk next about some of the genetic stuff that really you can't change. As of 2024, hopefully in the 2030s, we'll be able to alter our DNA. I'll see you there. But let's talk about big things in physique that you can't change that are very, very genetically prone. Some of these are, the heritability of these is in the 0.95 or 90 to 95% of this is determined exclusively by our DNA. And if you have a normal environment where you're not like malnutritioned when you grow up, it's damn near close to 100. Height. You don't choose your height. There's nothing really you can do in your child life to extend your height. That's not some kind of ridiculous surgery. And if you just fed normal foods, you're going to get about as tall as you can get. Limb length. Okay, like some people have short arms, some people have long arms. It's going to look a lot different on a physique. And limb ratios evolve from that as well. If you have long legs and short arms, it's going to look a certain way. You have long arms and short legs, it's going to look a certain way, and everything in between. You can't change those ratios with any technology we currently have. Next is specific muscle shape. This is very, very, very important. How your muscles are shaped, like Ronnie Coleman's bicep peak, that's not some shit that you can actually alter. You can make a muscle bigger or make it smaller. And some research indicates that on the teeniest of margins, you can grow one part of a muscle and not the other part of a muscle, or rather, grow one part of a muscle a tiny little bit more than you grow the other. But the general overall muscle shape, super quad sweep, super peak biceps, super whatever the hell horseshoe tricep, that's just not up to you. And that's going to be your genetics 90-some%, which means like if you have a bodybuilder and you like their quads and you look at Instagram pictures of them, often you are naked when you do this, sometimes entirely covered in petroleum jelly. I don't know why you would do this, but it's you doing it. You're weird. But don't stop. It's 2024. Weird is in. You look at their quads or whatever, your favorite pro, scrolling on Instagram, there's jelly on the fucking phone. Don't worry, you wipe that off later. It's totally cool to be inspired and be like, damn, dude, I want the biggest fucking quads I can get because these are beautiful. But it's probably unwise to be like, I want Chris Bumstead's quads. You're never going to have them because his quad shape is exactly and only what his genetics produced. You have different genetics, unless you're Chris Bumstead's long-lost evil twin. We made two of them in case one of them strayed from the path. I guess you're the robot twin. In any case, you cannot have other people's muscle shape. It is impossible as a current technology, so stop wanting it. But it's totally cool to get inspired. I look at Kevin Leverone's chest and I'm like, damn, but I don't pretend that my chest looks like his, and it would be a fool's errand to do because you're literally trying to do the impossible. Next, this is another big one, fat storage areas. Your body likes to put fat. It's kind of where its DNA says it should put fat. That means if you're one of them love handle peoples like myself, that's where your fat goes. I can have damn near glute striations and just hanging love handles at the same time. It's the fucking weirdest thing in the world. Other people, they have a little wasp waist and they diet for 19 weeks straight and their hamstrings are diced, their quads are separated, and their ass looks like they're 15 weeks out. You're like, what the fuck is going on? How do you have so much ass fat? First of all, sucks for being a competitive bodybuilder to deposit a lot of fat in your glutes. Second of all, there's really nothing you can do about it that has any measurable effect. And three, go out there and reproduce and have daughters, God damn it. Scott, is that too fucked up to say? Because, like, listen, real talk, if you're a dude with a fat ass, like, what up? That's kind of, what's that, whatever. You know what I'm saying? We all look different. But if you're a girl with a fat ass, Scott the video guy is also not single. I don't know where I was going with that. Lastly, initial total musculature. One of the biggest variables in prediction of how jacked you will ever be. There are really two of them. One I'll cover later, and you do have influence over that one. And that one, as a preview, is how much muscle do you actually grow with any given unit of time on top of what you started with? But the second variable is, what did you start with? There are people in high school that just exist. They just grew up and played normal sports, and they're 5'11", and they weigh 175 pounds, and they have a six-pack. And you're like, holy fucking shit. This is just the muscle you normally carry. These are the guys that when they go to college, they start training a lot. They get up to 220 completely drug-free. They get up to 290 not drug-free. And then they win the USAs on their first try. Some Eric Janicki looking ass motherfuckers. Now, I don't know how Eric Janicki looked when he was a kid, but my suspicion is that he wasn't so small. Maybe I'm wrong. I was quite small when I was a kid, but it turned out I had a huge ability to add muscle. I didn't start out with a lot. But how much you start out with absolutely matters. And this genetic difference is one of the biggest differences in why males and females are of different sizes. Because at least in the early phases of training, relative to their size, males and females gain roughly the same amount of muscle. That probably, my hypothesis is it probably changes because there's lots of stuff unexplained. Later, I think muscle peters off in women. But at least at first, the relative muscle gain is very similar. But the thing is, females start out weighing like, you know, what does a high school girl look like? Scott the video guy? I'm kidding, that's fucked up. 110 pounds or some shit, where the guys weigh like 130, man, and the girls are typically a little bit more high body fat. Because we're talking about like starting out with 30 pounds more muscle. Yeah, geez, that fucking adds up, man. 20, 25 pounds more muscle. You have the exact same growth rates for years, that person's still going to be 25 pounds of muscle ahead of you. That's fucking nuts. Actually more because it's relative growth rate. So it's even more compounded than that. These are genetic things that you cannot change. You just can't change. Now, here's a list, a little bit longer, luckily, of genetic things that you can do something about. They're not wholly genetically determined. The environment, which is your interference with how you live your life and how you train and how you monitor things, can have a big effect. But genetics is still very important. First is maximum recoverable volumes. Some people just recover from the fucking kitchen sink. And some people, do a few sets of this and that, and they're sore for days and days, and they get weaker, and then they get stronger again after a week, and you're like, holy fucking shit. So I can do this explaining for you now. You've probably done it in your head already. One of the major differences between people who are super hardcore online advocates of Mike Mentzer and HIIT training and low volume and those who advocate high volume, one of the biggest differences is just these people just have different genetics. Like there's a never-ending number of comments. I actually want, Scott, we should get ChatGPT to be like, hey, ChatGPT, pretend you're a commenter on a YouTube video and someone is advocating for high volume, and I want you to generate 2,500 unique responses telling people a personal story about how lower volume worked best for you. I mean, it's probably read a trillion comments like that already. It's like, no problem. So you got to get confrontational. You got to tell people they don't know what they're doing. And you have to say, well, I used to do high volume, but then when I dropped my volume, I got the best gains ever. And here's the thing. I'm mocking those people because people are fun to mock as a joke. But as a serious thing, those people 90% of the time are completely right on. For them, it did work better because they have a very low ability to recover from high volume. If they had a very high ability to recover from high volume, they could just keep pushing the volume and keep growing more, as we see with almost every single average study. Another thing is the adaptive magnitude per level of stimulus. What does that mean? That means that if I give you 3 sets of squats and I give someone else 3 sets of squats, you grow some number of grams of muscle from that until it goes back to baseline on your heels, and they grow 1.5 times or double as much or half as much. Some people, for the same exact stimulus, will just grow more. Like, that's just a thing that you observe in the gym. Many of you have seen it. You watch some kid who started when he was 15, and by the time he's 16, he's like mega fucking jacked. You're like, what the fuck? Like, it took me 2 years to do that. And you were even the same size when you started. Some people just grow faster from any given unit of stimulus. That's a big deal. But remember, you have something to say about it. How you sleep, how you eat, and the quality of your training all determine that magnitude, but that's going to be anchored relatively well into your genetics. So if you have amazing genetics for growing a ton, you can kind of fuck shit up and still grow pretty well. If you have amazing genetics for growing a ton and you really optimize everything, you're going to be Jay Cutler, who gained like 50 pounds of muscle in his first year of training. He also went over to like a local farmer and bought like a whole cow's worth of ground beef. So like, this is a very serious commitment, plus some of the best genetics, and that's how you get crazy shit. But on the other hand, if you don't have amazing genetics to adapt to any given level of stimulus and you're kind of half-assing it, you may experience very little growth whatsoever. And then it's not a mystery as to why it's happening. It's a mystery to you, but at least philosophically, we know it could be this thing. Next is another really big one, the degree of fatigue imposed by a given stimulus. If you get a huge adaptive magnitude out of a stimulus, you grow a ton from any given number of 3 sets of squats or some shit. But you also just don't get really fatigued from squats. Like, some people do squats, they're like, I feel pretty good. Quads are pumped, but I feel great. Other people are like, dude, my back hurts. My life hurts. My soul hurts. I can't breathe. I'm throwing up. And it's taking me 3 days until I can walk normally again. That means you impose a lot of fatigue for a given stimulus. And even if your adaptive magnitude is high, you got to deload more often. You can't do as much volume. You can't ramp the volume as much because the fatigue will kind of kick you in the dick at some point much sooner. It's kind of a good analogy to think about it. This, you have 2 cars. They both go the same max speed and they have the same kind of track endurance. But one car just like tends to have a component fail or break down twice as often as the other. You don't want to take that car to, Scott, how do you say that race that's spelled Lemans?
Le Mans?
So it's Le Mans, right? Oh, Le Mans. And then some French asshole inevitably be like, oh, no, is the, how you say, Le Mans. No, that's a French way of saying lemon, motherfucker. Where were y'all at in World War II? French people. I'm so kidding, right? Also, you guys are about to beat Russia's ass in World War III, which is going to be fucking sweet to watch. Fuck that goddamn place. In any case, if you take less fatigue for any given stimulus, you can alter that. Remember, you can have better exercise selection, better technique, and so on down the line. But genetics do play a role in that, absolutely. Some people just get beat up more than others. And sometimes that correlates well to the same people that are getting beat up are also growing the most. But sometimes people grow a ton and get beat up very little. That's ideal. And sometimes people don't grow much, but they get beat up like shit. I've had personal training clients like that. You just end up scratching your head like, holy fucking shit. Were you just not cut out for hard physical training? And sometimes the answer is not cut out so well for it. Next, you can impose a certain level of fatigue. So let's say you do 3 sets of squats, you get some good stimulus, you get some pretty decent fatigue. Another variable that's highly genetically determined, but you do have something to say about it, is how fast the fatigue falls off. If you get crazy fucked up from squats, like you're sore, you're tired, you're crampy, but 2 days later, you're like completely healed, holy shit, you got a gift, because you can train squats 3 times a week and just blow the fuck up. Whereas some people, they won't even accumulate a ton of fatigue, like a little sore, a little tired, but 3 days later, they're a similar level of sore and tired, and you're like, oh, damn it, the fuck, I thought you'd be recovered by now. Very genetic, but also huge intersection there with the variables that you control. How you're sleeping, what you're eating, how many adult films you don't watch. Remember, porn steals gains. Wait, does it? Scott, does porn steal your gains?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Less of a man.
Less of a man. What's that one crazy asshole in a bunch of comments section? What's his name?
Porn weakens men.
Porn weakens men. You pussy ass motherfucker. You let porn weaken you, little bitch? Anyway, if you're watching this, hello. Next, huge one, guys. Huge one coming up. Injury probability is a very, very genetic, but of course you have something to say about it. You can do better technique. You can not overdo the first week of working out. You can slowly ramp in. That drops your injury probability by 10. Exercise selection, and so on down the line. Warming up properly. There's tons of things you can do. However, normal distribution, right? Bell curve. Some people, most people, like, just don't do dumb shit and you won't get hurt very often, but you still get hurt every now and again. People on the way you guys are seeing it, it's going to be your right side, but really what I mean to say is left side of the curve, the lower numbers saying the bad side of the variable. Look, some people are just fragile motherfuckers, man. And this shit is real. And some people just get hurt a lot from shit you would think would never hurt them. They're like doing perfect technique bench press, and they're like, ow, my pec. And you're like, the fuck? We was rep 6 of like 12, and it's your 4th week of training after a deload. How the fuck did this happen? Some people are just fucking fragile. Everything hurts their fucking shoulders, their elbows, blah, blah, blah. And they take a long time to recover and so on and so forth. The injuries are often more severe. On the other end, there are people that you're like, how the fuck are you still alive? And in one piece, doing insanely dumb shit all the time. People will do partials. They'll, do rack pulls with 600 with a rounded back. They'll do half squats. Their toes will come up with heels will come up on a hack squat with 8 plates. And you're like, how the fuck is that guy still alive? Just doesn't get hurt much. The intelligent thing here is whatever your injury probability is, you do everything you can to mitigate it, because for everyone, injury is bad. However, also, you may want to look at various people and their experiences, take something from them as a learning example, and kind of leave the rest. For example, if someone who's insanely high injury probability, you just found this out from interacting with them for a while, tells you like, hey man, I found this great exercise. It really like treats the pec super well. On the one hand, maybe they found a good exercise. And on the other hand, the stimulus of that exercise could be so small because they're working around so much injury stuff that you're just like, yeah, man, you don't tell them this, but you're like, I think you just get hurt a lot, and I don't. So I'm just going to stick to the shit that fucking works because I don't need to do this fucking weird shit. On the other hand, you look at guys that are insanely resilient, and they'll tell you like, yeah, man, you can fucking do this. You won't get hurt. Like, you're not that fragile. And a lot of the people who, which is a great group of folks, like the pro movement people, the ones that say you shouldn't be scared of moving in a certain way and your body's really resilient. A lot of those folks are actually very resilient genetically. And so it's easy for them to think, oh, you don't get hurt often. People are scared of stuff too much. But if you've been hurt from everything all the time, your whole life, and gym and volleyball class in the 7th grade, you're going to have a little bit of a different opinion about that. So some people have, you're like, man, that's really the technique you do for squats. You're like, yeah, like, you don't feel anything weird in your back. Like, yeah, never been hurt. You try it and one of your vertebrae like just goes right out of your asshole, and someone's like, you shit yourself. Like, nope, that's actually one of my vertebrae. Please pick that up for me. Thank you. Yes, it is now covered with feces and blood and parts of nerves. Good God. What is this, an episode of The Boys? Scott the Video Guy. Have you begun to watch Gen V?
Still haven't.
Fuck you. Folks, get out there. Amazon, Gen V. I'm not sponsored by them. It's an amazing show. I love it. I love The Boys also. It's same universe. Man, that show just gets me pumped for some reason. Like when they'll fight each other every now and again, or they'll have cool superpowers and they'll do cool stuff and like try to intimidate each other. The only thing I want out of this life is a full sim VR that puts me in that fucking world, but I get Amazo from DC Powers, or second best, peak fucking Super Saiyan 4 Goku, or Vegeta. And then just go in there and be like, nah, just punch someone. Fucking, I'm telling you guys. Go watch it. It's fucking sweet. Anyway. Oh, and the main character, sure, what's her name? And she's fine as hell. What's up, girl? JK, I'm married. What's up? Lastly, nope, this list continues. It was just on 2 pages. Continuing on. A big difference genetically that you do have some control over is the speed of involution from training. When you stop training, how fast do you lose your gains? Some people cannot train for 2 weeks, and you're out with them and you're like, are you peaking for something? They're like, I haven't trained 2 weeks. You're like, the fuck? You have veins in your pecs and they're completely full. What happens when you lift? Nothing? Or you just get like to look like the Hulk? Maybe that's the case. Some people hang on to it. Other people, sometimes pretty gifted as far as how they can look, they stop training for 2 weeks and they're notably downsized and softer and smoother. Now, with good nutrition, with proper maintenance training, not taking exceptional amounts of time off, you can mitigate most of these factors and doesn't matter a ton, but nonetheless, absolutely matters for how you look and how you feel and how you structure your realistic thing. Some people could tell you like, hey, you want to look jacked on vacation, don't lift during vacation. Don't even lift for the week before you want to drop your fatigue. For some people, that's absolutely the right advice. For other people, like, dude, I'm going to be fucking half my size by the time I get to vacation. And people are going to be like, I thought you started lifting weights last year. And I'm like, God fucking damn it. So definitely something to consider. Next, the balance of size between different muscle groups. Your genetics don't just give you the basis of how big your muscles are going to be to begin with. They do that for every single individual muscle and every individual muscle part, because that's how your shape forms. So it's totally possible to have really awesome genetics for biceps, chest, shoulders, quads, etc., but have tricep genetics that are like, bro, what the fuck? Perfect example of that, no offense intended, one of the best, Marcus Rule. You can Google him if you're younger. If you're older, you know what I'm talking about. If you're younger, Google Marcus Rule, however you spell that, Google will pick it up. And this is just like a German dude who, like, was off season. He weighed like 330 pounds or some shit at like 5'10", and he competed at like 275. And he had like one of the biggest chests ever, maybe. The shoulders didn't make any sense. Traps, I have no idea how he didn't have like sleep apnea while he was awake. Biceps were fucking killer, but his triceps were just like, eh. And people tell him, like, why don't you bring up your triceps? And he was basically a super nice guy, but in a sense, he was like, do you think I haven't been trying? He's actually injured his triceps a few times because he's trying to pour so much volume into them, they fucking snapped. That's just some shit we have. You know, some people have like really tiny forearms. Some people have really tiny calves. Some people have really tiny insert muscle anywhere. And that means that you can do something about it. But doing something about it means you might need to not invest a ton of time into training the whole body similarly, but train a little bit more focus on one muscle group that you want to bring up. Or you can lean into the differences and be like, fuck it, I like having big arms and small shoulders. It's a cool look. That's totally fine. But you do have something to say about it, but it also is very, very highly genetic. Next is your ability to train hard in the gym. Yes, that has a very big genetic base. Some people are psychotic and they're like a freight train. Some people are just not interested in hurting themselves, which is really natural human proclivity to not want to hurt yourself. Like, hey, you know what's going to get you big? Like, what? Put your hand over this fucking candle. Like, fuck that. Get out of my face. Like, well, that's not going to hurt as bad as if you do hack squats for a set of 20. Like, well, fuck that too. You're like, all right, fuck that. But there are absolutely mental exercises you can do. Just being in the gym for a long time, really woosahing and meditating about the training process and pain and what that all means. I'll have a lecture for you guys at some point about all that shit too. But you can modify how hard you're able to go. You can, but there's a decent genetic component there. Next, the ability to relax and stress when not outside the gym. I've made a few observations over my time as a competitive bodybuilder. And one of, I think, my most important observations is that precisely the people who give the most of a shit at a very immersive level about how jacked they're getting, if you go past the 90% point of giving a shit, you just get negative returns, because that much giving a shit tells me you have a more neurotically prone personality with some OCD tendencies. And that means you just worry all the time. And that means chronic baseline stress hormone is really high in your body. And you just don't get very jacked from that. And you don't lose fat very well from that. All the not so great things occur because you cannot relax. It's very difficult for you to relax. Some of the best athletes I've ever personally interacted with are people that can turn it on for training. And as soon as they're in training, they turn it off. And then like you could run up like to a crap load of bodybuilders, probably punch them in the face, and they'll be like, well, what's up? Do you know me from Instagram? And you're like, holy shit. Whereas other people, oftentimes the skinnies, are like super neurotic and they're like, RIR, I've got to log my shit. Like, yeah, you do. It's good. Great workout. What are you doing later? Like, oh, I don't know. I'm going to plan my next day's training. I'm going to really sit and think about it. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. Relaxation is the state of your body, which helps you grow muscle and burn fat. The state of your body that's fight or flight is great for performing the training, but terrible for after. If you don't know how to relax, it's bad news. Normally distributed trait, you can do something about it. You can lean into the hobbies that help you relax, stay the fuck away from your work when it's not work hours, so on and so forth. But the more you can relax outside of the gym, straight up, the better it is. The ultimate arrangement for a professional bodybuilder who wants to be the best ever is to do really just two things. One is train hard as fuck, and two is like play PS5 or whatever with his friends. That's it. Two things you have to do every day. You don't even have to do the PlayStation thing, but better than sitting and staring at a wall. Next, this is a very interesting one because this video is about muscle growth and fat loss, and these things kind of contradict each other, is genetics for appetite. Appetite is highly, highly, highly genetic. But with food choices, with meal timing, with learning how your body works, you can absolutely modify it. And now with the birth of true anorectic drugs, Ozempic, tirzepatide, et cetera, now we're onto some shit where you can modify this pharmacologically to a great extent. However, there's a yin and yang here with appetite. If you have genetically high appetite and great proclivity for muscle growth, and all these other variables line up, you're going to be 300 fucking pounds. You have to want to eat food to get to 300 fucking pounds at some level. And the guys who weigh 300, who are bitching about how much food they have to eat, when they stop eating as much food as they have to, they go back down to 250. And they're like, oh, this is better. You're like, 250 fucking pounds, I'd have to stuff myself to get to 220. 250 is your natural state. And then 300 is possible with some force feeding. There's only so much force feeding you can do until you're just out of the fucking sport. The opposite is true, however, though, for those guys who like to eat a lot. Contest prep and getting lean is unnecessarily hard. On the other hand, if you don't have a big appetite, dieting is as easy as breathing. Someone's like, here's your diet for fat loss. You're like, this is more food than I usually eat. They're like, all right, well, eat it and tell me what happens. 8 weeks later, they fucking veins in their abs and they're like, are you hungry? They're like, no, actually, I hate eating all this. And you're like, oh my God, you want to be the leanest person of all time? You let me know. Looks like it's in the cards. On the other hand, if you try to get a person like that to get jacked, dude, people straight up quit. I've coached a few people who, after they got over about 170, 180 pounds, like, this ain't for me, man. I can't do this anymore. I hate food. I don't want to eat any more food. Get food the fuck away from me. I can't do it. And you try to do more cheat meals, more high palatability food that's easier to shovel in your face with a spoon. All of these work, which is why it's a modifiable trait, but you're running up against a huge, huge problem here. So depending on if you're going to go for more for the mass game or more for the easy fat loss game, you kind of get sort of both worlds there. Next, related to diet and fat loss, how quickly you gain diet fatigue. Some people, you started on a pretty tough diet and 12 weeks later, you're like, how do you feel? They're like, I feel pretty good, just kind of grooving, and fat's coming off, everything feels great. Other folks, after 3 or 4 weeks, they're like, dude, is there a way I can like snort pizza without accounting to my goals? And by the way, I sleep 12 hours a day now and I got fired from work because I can't work. My brain doesn't work anymore. You're like, oh my fucking God, you really do gain diet fatigue really, really fast, and it gets really, really high. On the other hand, there's a question about how quickly people lose diet fatigue. So some people, curiously, they gain diet fatigue really fast, but then they lose it really fast. So for them, the best approach is probably 4-week diet, 2-week maintenance. 4-week diet, 2-week maintenance. If they're coachable like that, hey, if you're one of those people, that works really great. Dr. Layne Norton talks about that as diet sprints. For those people, it works really, really awesome. For other people, they are going to lose diet fatigue in the course of months. And you could guess what the worst genetics here are: gains diet fatigue to a high level early and takes a long time to lose it. That sucks, man. That means you're probably going to best benefit from pharmacological intervention, something like anorectic drugs, in order to get the job done. Otherwise, it's really, really tough. Some people, however, will gain very little diet fatigue, and after a couple of days of high carb eating, will lose all of it. And then these are the kind of people that like just have abs walking around anyway, and they'll diet for a show, and they'll be backstage yapping to everyone about how they like their second place trophy and they like the color silver. And you're like, how the fuck do you still have energy? And they're like, I don't know, this is great. You guys want to go clubbing? You're like, the fuck out of here. You just don't accumulate diet fatigue. The bad news for those kinds of folks is they often don't make the best coaches because they can't relate to what's going on with their clients. Most clients will have, drum roll for genetics, average diet fatigue. And if you're on one of the extremes or the other, if you're on the extremes of you accumulate a lot of diet fatigue, you're actually going to work out a lot of strategies how to mitigate that. You're going to be a godsend to your clients and people that you help as a coach, as a mentor, whatever. If you don't accumulate much diet fatigue and it goes away really quick, you're going to be giving your clients nonsense advice like, oh yeah, here's a 16-week straight diet or 1,000-calorie deficit. And every now and again, if you feel really tired, just eat like one high-carb cheat meal and you're going to be good. And it just doesn't work for almost anyone because you're a fucking freak and it only works for you. So big deal there. Lastly, sleep quality and duration. What? But that's just entirely our choice. No, it's not. It's highly genetic. Some people, man, they just sleep like a fucking dream. My wife, who I sleep with, fellas, your boy's in that shit. Actual sleep, right? She'll just pass out at 9 p.m. in front of the TV and have fucking REM sleep right there. It doesn't matter what's on. I could be talking on the phone to somebody else and doesn't give a shit, out completely. And at roughly 7 in the morning, she just opens her eyes and she's completely well rested and she's going. Like there could be a fucking thermonuclear war outside of our house. She'd sleep right through that fucking shit. Other people that I know, man, like 2 a.m., if you could give them some compelling television or some good Instagram scrolling, they're still awake. Trouble getting to sleep. They never sleep very deeply. They wake up all the fucking time. And then some folks, have trouble getting up in the morning and so on and so forth. So how much sleep duration and quality you can get is highly, highly genetic. But of course, we've made a few videos on this channel about how to improve your sleep hygiene, how to sleep better, making the room colder, making the room darker, trying to hire someone to be your friend to cuddle with you. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I suppose that would work. Cuddling. Guys, let's do a poll in the comments. Who here can fall asleep and have decent sleep in a cuddled position with someone? That ain't me, bro. People produce too much goddamn body heat. I need it cold. And also, like, I need to turn a lot. My arms don't fit. Like, I'd be putting my arm on your face like that. Doesn't fucking work. Scott the Video Guy, can you sleep cuddled, or do you need you cuddle first and then go in your own little corner and sleep?
Oh, Gordon, I hate sleeping with people.
Sleeping with people is terrible.
I hate it.
I swear to God, like, some of the movies, you know, they'll do like the guy and the girl meet and that's big romance, and they'll like put a towel out on the beach and they'll like cuddle up and they'll sleep, and like, the sunrise will come up, and I'm like, the fuck? About 2 a.m, you'd be like, I'm fucking cold. My arm's dead, by the way, because you're lying on it. Can we get the fuck out of here and get somewhere without sand or sun or water? Fuck the beach. I hate the fucking beach. Scott, do you like the beach?
No, I fucking hate sand.
Isn't that crazy? We're officially curmudgeon-y 40-year-old assholes. Oh, the beach, the sand gets in my, well, you know. The
Every
rest.
time I leave the beach, I like bite down and I hear a crunch because somehow it gets in my mouth.
Yes, every time.
I hate it with my teeth.
Mine's less mysterious because I actually try to eat the sand. They keep saying it's not good, but I feel fine. It's just the crunch is annoying. Scott, I get sand in my ears,
Ugh.
and I get, if it's like wave beach with cool ocean waves, which I love the most, hate the least, it'll get in, like when I used to have hair, I would spend 30 minutes shampooing my head, washing it out, get out of the shower to go like out with friends or something, brush my hair with my hand and pick up like 5 sand particles. And I was like, how? I had a fucking power shower on my fucking, how does it work? The sand gets everywhere, folks. Don't go to the beach. The beach sucks. All right, wrapping it up. How to deal with your own genetics. Couple points here. First, learn as much as you can about how your body responds to all of the training variables we just talked about. Diet fatigue, accumulation of training fatigue, stimulus, so on and so forth. And train for your best responses, not someone else's. I'm very curious to know about what other very good people in bodybuilding do and think, but I'm never going to interpolate their process directly into mine because I ain't them. It's too much, it's too little, it's off one way or another. You gotta think about what's best for you. So take all the ideas you can from other people, watch the Trend Twins a lot, ideally on mute. I'm kidding, Trend Twins, all love and jokes. And then pick up some ideas, but if that doesn't exactly work for you, make sure it's working for you because you are the only person in the world that has your genetics, unless you have an identical twin, and then they also have your genetics. Scott the Video Guy, Dr. Crystal, my wife and I, we've been watching this show on Amazon called Twin Love.
Oh my.
Highly recommended. Basically, they pair up identical twins in like a dating show, but they separate the 2 twins. So first of all, they deal with separation weirdness because identical twins, as predicted by behavioral genetics and as revealed by the literature, they actually love each other more than any 2 people love each other. It doesn't give a fuck how much you love your wife or whatever the fuck. Identical twins love each other more. And how do we know this? When one twin dies, typically the other twin reports the highest possible level of grief that never ends until they die. It's a part of you. It's the same person. P.S. Some of them, when they live together and talk together, their cognitive processing doesn't work to full capacity because they bounce ideas off each other. It's like having 2 GPTs team up on a task versus just one. So you separate the twins, and some of them are like, I feel like a part of me is missing. That's literally true because half of your DNA is stuck in some other fucking body. So if you cut your arm off and give it to someone else, preserved on ice, potentially to reconnect it, someone's like, how do you feel? Like, I feel like I'm missing a fucking arm, but imagine missing a whole other person. In any case, twins are dope as fuck. And all these twins are hot too. Holy fucking shit. And one of these bitches, man, Scott, no joke, the 2 twins, hilariously, they're identical twins and they're 2 different houses. The kind of outfits they wear when they go out, I'm like, are you auditioning for a porn star stripper act? What the fuck is going on? You know that, like when girls like want to like dress up, they look super fucking hot, but just barely it's like okay to go in public. These bitches just dumped over that line completely. I was like, I can see your asshole. And am I complaining? Fuck no, I think it's the greatest thing ever. In any case, so 1, do your best. And next point, be okay with being your best. No, you do not have CBum's waistline. Neither do I. Neither does anyone except for CBum. You have to be okay with what you are building because you cannot yet get someone's DNA. Doesn't matter how many magazines you look at or how many TikTok reels you scroll through, you ain't getting anyone's body, but an enhanced and superior version of your own. So learn your own body, and as you put in work, learn to be proud of what you've built because you can't have anyone's genetics. You see a dude at the gym with big ass arms? I love it. I love your big arms. Can I touch them? Can I touch you? Can we make out? Those are perfectly good things to say, but oh man, I wish I had your arms. Well, motherfucker, why don't you wish for a bigger dick and $1 million bank account at the same time? I have one of those. I'll tell you that much. soon. Scott, should I get one of those experimental Swiss surgeries that inserts like a sock into your... Yeah?
You get like that extender in there.
I barely use the thing. I have nothing to lose, really.
Plenty of healing time.
But what do I have to gain? Can you imagine? I fucking stick it to the wife and she's like, too big, I'm hurting. I'm like, oh.
I guess I gotta back out.
Oh, I made a terrible decision. Is there a way? I call the surgeon. I'm like, is there a way to deflate this? He's like, no, there's no way to deflate the actual penile tissue we inserted. I'm like, remix, get it out. Good problem to have, I guess. Although, hey, Scott, wouldn't it be sweet? Like, you have a surgery to reduce your dick size in a week. Dude, I would be dropping that shit to everybody, bro. Fucking checkout line at the grocery store. You know, the people usually bullshit with you like, how's your Tuesday? You're like, it's pretty good. I got a hospital trip coming up next week. And they're like, oh yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. Like, yeah, no big deal. Just getting the old dick cut off a little bit. It's too big. You know, you can tell. They're like, really? And all of a sudden, doesn't matter, gender, age, it's all good. The store clerk is like, maybe you don't need to cut it off. And they're like, how would you know? Why don't we take a look at it? See if can't make things fit. Anyway, back to real life. Big one. Be careful when judging other people. Let me give you a couple of scenarios, all of which are reasonable, by the way, and happen all the time. The people that you think suck, small Harry Potter looking motherfuckers putting their fucking lifting on Instagram, and you're like, why do you even bother? They could have such dog shit genetics for the physical part. They're trying harder than you'll ever know. They just have bad genetics. I happen to know many people like this personally. They're real. And they really are trying harder than you. Not you specifically, you watching this right now. Yes, you. I'm talking to you exactly. You've trained harder than everyone ever because you're the fucking man. But the rest of you, who we won't talk about, you don't train very hard and you judge other people for it. The thing is, you don't know who's got it good and who's got it bad genetically. And it could be like this person is training fucking way harder than you and you should be looking up to them. Another thing, the people you do look up to, this also happens quite often. They're barely trying. They just have amazing genetics. There's tons of people like that. Not to call anyone out, but to put it in perspective, Kevin Levrone, bodybuilder from back in the 90s, one of the greats. For much of his career, he only trained for 4 to 6 months. The rest of the time, he actually had a rock and roll band. He would just tour with a band and I assume have sex with everyone possible. That's what you do on tour, I think. That's the whole purpose of touring with a band. Music is somehow involved. I'm not sure how. But he only trained for like a third of the year for like 5 years in a row and ended up showing up on the Olympia stage looking like he always does, which is fucking unbelievable. One of the best ever. So yeah, it's not working that hard, period. Maybe he worked quite hard during that 4 months, but Jesus Christ, it's 4 months. Who gives a flying fuck? That's the thing. You may be looking up to this person like they have something to teach you, but what they have to teach you is like choose the right parents, I guess. Not to throw any shade, just it is what it is. Another one, the people you think are trying hard with bad genetics, because you're like, okay, this guy's a skinny twerp, and he looks like he's trying hard, but he clearly has bad genetics. They might not actually be trying very hard because it looks like they're trying hard, but they're really not. They just have no ability to push. And they complain, how do I do this? Optimal, blah, 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 but they've never put in a gram of fucking effort in their entire lives. That's totally possible as well. Another scenario is the people with good genetics you think have it easy because like, oh my God, look at the genetics, could have both good genetics and put in more effort than you ever could. So people will automatically, some people will say like, as soon as you get a jack guy, they're like steroids. But yes, also he's taking steroids. Also when he wasn't, he was 2 times your size. Also he's more man than you'll ever be. You're nothing to him. You live in a basement. He lives in the real world. That's a real thing. So sometimes you say, oh, it's just these genetically gifted guys, but there are some genetically gifted guys who push everything they can into their training and prep as well. And some of them rise to quite great heights and they kind of have it all. And so it's not, life isn't strictly some kind of fairy tale where you're going to have the one thing, but also it comes at a cost. You know, not everything comes at a cost. Some people do have it better and work harder. They're just superior. And some people have shitty genetics for training hard and shitty genetics for looking good. And then so they're kind of, in a sense, largely hopeless. The real world is full of fucked up shit like that. And that's what you're going to see in the real world. And lastly, because we judge people morally for not putting in hard work given their genetics, I think we're forgetting that the ability to put in effort is at least half genetic anyway. And some of the proclivities for muscle growth are also half genetic. So if you're saying, yeah, you got good genetics, but you don't try hard, you actually should be rephrasing that statement in your head of you have bad genetics for trying hard and pretty decent genetics for putting on muscle. So on that aggregate, you actually don't have good genetics for putting on muscle because the genetics for putting on muscle as expressed by a behavioral geneticist, will be like, do you have the genetics to do all the things involved in muscle growth, which means, have the genetics that can grow muscle, but also show up to the gym and work hard. If that part is not in your DNA really, or you really suck at it, you're one of the ends of the normal distribution, I don't know, then you're not going to be that great. So kind of what are we judging anymore and why? I think judging other people for a variety of things is kind of fun to do if you want to feel good about yourself for a few seconds and then bad about yourself for a lot longer. It's fun, a little dopamine hit, be like, yeah, fuck this guy. But in reality, I think most of us could kind of do better by just observing the world and doing our very best, no matter what. So to finish this all up, main point here for beginners is do your best and don't worry about genetics at all. It takes years for you to understand what kind of genetics you have, so it's pointless to worry. Like one of my least favorite questions to answer, in a sense, all jokes, is when people who have been lifting for 2 weeks are like, what do you think my genetics are for this? Shut up, shut your fucking mouth. You have no idea. And I don't have any idea. Shut up and put in the work. Now, you don't even have to shut up. You can keep talking, but put in the work. After a few years, you'll realize what your genetics are. And no sooner than that, by the way. For intermediates, the big take homes here are get to know your strengths and limitations. Now is the time to get to know them and begin to alter your approach to optimize for results based on how that works. Basically tailoring your training to your genetics and lifestyle and so on and so forth. And then for advanced folks, people who have been lifting, 7 to 8 years or more, getting into that realm of lifting where gains are very difficult to come by, you have to be very familiar with the strengths and limitations. One of the trippiest things ever is people who have like genetically weak chest. They've tried everything and they're still obsessed about getting their chest to be double the size. Not like 10% more. Like, yeah, man, I just need to double my pecs. I'm like, dude, the rest of you is massive. Your chest clearly sucks dick. I think we should be more realistic. And it just tells me they just haven't gotten to know their bodies. They know them, but they're kind of purposefully ignorant of them because they're rebelling against reality. Don't do that. Reality is by far the stupidest thing to rebel against because it doesn't ask you for permission. It's always here. Get to know it well, and then just optimize your approach to training. However, as an advanced person, don't think you know it all. You could say, look, for my best leg exercises are hack squats and leg presses, hands down. I don't like this. I don't like that. I used to be like that. And then I discovered belt squats through a friend. And then I optimized my own. I didn't do much with them because I didn't like them. I did optimize my own technique. And now belt squats are like my rank 1 for leg training. No joke. Because experimenting and continuing to do that a little bit while knowing the core of what works best for you is a true mark of an advanced athlete. All right. We talked about a lot of stuff. Go out there and cuddle with someone that means something to you and try to get good sleep. I'll see you guys next time.